This is things you might not have heard, and I am Jay Cleveland Payne. And this morning, on the 13th of October, 2025, we are talking about real history. Well, we are the Conversation Project. We are your home for headline news, information, and pop culture references that are worth chatting about. And we are definitely chatting about the Israeli hostages now all being released, or at least all the living ones that we have. And we'll go deeper into detail that one. Donald Trump, right now, over to my left on my screen I have above me, is preparing to speak in front of the Parliament of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, is speaking right now, doing his introduction, basically. And by the time I wrap this thing up, Trump will have some words that we'll start talking about pretty quickly. But we also have other news, including the government shutdown here in the U.S. Trump may have found peace in the Middle East, but he hadn't quite found peace in his own homeland yet. And the big K-pop Demon Hunters Ramen challenge that is causing burns, little burns, for children around the world. So we'll talk about those 3 stories and 10 stories total today, because it's Monday. So we get 10 stories, 2 extra stories for the day. And you help us pick them out by being a part of our fandom, our news nerd nation, if you will, and following us on our feeds. We'll talk more about that in a bit, but you help us pick these stories out for the morning or day whenever you watch this. So we want to remind you that that's all good. Find out information on how those things happen directly by going to our website. This is theconversationproject.com. Check out more about our spotlight sponsor today, which is Ground News. Find them at our website, and you'll find more ways to get better news, or better ways to get more news, if you will. And we have a great deal for you if you use our affiliate link. We are affiliate sponsor. More about them in a bit. But right now, let's get into the news, because there's a lot to get into today and a lot of stuff going on. I'm not sure how long I can keep up this faux energy, this coffee. It's kicking, but we're going to see how long it kicks along with us for this morning. Let's get into all the great news and some not so great news for us today. Starting off with what is great news. Maybe not as great for your political bent, but it is great news for us to see, as Hamas has freed the 13 remaining living hostages to the Red Cross. This is confirmed by the Israeli military. Now, I have to fault my robot editors for making sure the numbers are straight. I don't know if it's really 13, 17. We were told the number was 20, essentially, as we were walking up to this first step of the ceasefire. But 13 is the number that the robot editor put into our headline. If it's wrong, we'll work with that. The Israeli officials did say all remaining living hostages were transferred to ICRC in Gaza, and this first phase of the ceasefire framework is happening there. The bodies of additional captives are being recovered. Some of them are still in the rubble of places, and so this is going to take some time going forth with identification work to follow in Israel as they're being brought in there. We've already had issues with Hamas releasing remains of people to only find out they were not the actual remains of the people they thought, because Hamas was doing those things. The release was coordinated with Egyptian and Qatari mediation and monitored by international observers. All were looking to make sure things are good. Military briefings stressed the verification steps are important. Medical triage for all returnees, taking care of them. So next is prisoner exchanges. We're going to give them a whole lot of people who were bad dudes back to Hamas. Corridor access, how people are getting back into Gaza, and whether de-escalation will hold beyond this basic part. There were 20 parts to the plan that Donald Trump threw out there, and this is essentially 2. So it's the first phase of the piece, and we're putting a lot of effort, a lot of emphasis into this, because I think Trump wanted that deadline before, the Nobel Peace Prize, which he didn't win. But you see where we're going with this one. We'll see how this plays out going forward, because we have a long way to go. As analysts say, this will have to be on the very top priorities for international work, for international entreaties, even though we still have that Russia-Ukraine thing that's out there. And, meanwhile, back at the ranch, a new survey finds that both parties and Trump are sharing blame on ongoing government shutdown. The government's still shut down. It's going on the second week of this thing, going on the third week of this thing, and fresh polling is showing that Americans are split down the line for the shutdown blame. Both parties getting a good chunk of it, the Democrats and Republicans, and Donald Trump being the focal point for getting a good chunk of it on his own. A separate survey finds that episodes like this are hurting the Republicans more, and this one particularly, and not really doing any favors for the Democrats. Memes on the side. Messaging fights are now centering on back pay, healthcare projections, and program cuts, which were what we're basically at risk of before the shutdown happened. And now, because of the shutdown, we have to make sure that they're taken care of. Back pay specifically because there are people who are working in 2 days. I think today's the day that the Coast Guard stops getting paid. On Wednesday, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Guardians will stop getting paid. We'll see how that works out for back pay going forward. I talked to a lot of folks. I am a veteran. I know folks who are veterans and talk to very folks in the conversations here. There are people who are extremely worried because they are paycheck to paycheck, or they have very serious conditions where they need their money now. They can't hold back onto it. Their credit's not going to hold for long, and they need it. The takeaways for this strategy is serious. Frustration is bipartisan, so stop focusing on, the Democrat shutdown or the Republican shutdown or the Trump shutdown or the Schumer shutdown or whoever you want to blame it on. Try to figure out how the shutdown can be fixed so that people will actually believe in the U.S. government again. Maybe. Probably not, but it's a possibility. Now, watch for some backlash and change in suburban type voters and federal worker heavy districts. And that's where you're going to see early opinion shifts back and forth. If things go for the better in some of those places, you may see some things pull out better. If not, that's where your canaries and coal mines should be, or coal mines or canaries should be, to see how things are playing. An interesting take on the takeover of Washington, D.C. Trump's move to add federal troops and National Guard members to patrol the streets sparks for calls for longtime House delegate to resign. Yes, there's a delegate in the House of Representatives for the District of Columbia. She can't vote, but she can show up and be there. Now, AP reports that there are calls for Eleanor Holmes Norton to actually step down after the federal intervention curtailed D.C.'s autonomy, which happened. DC Mayor Muriel Barroso took basically the brunt of the attacks from Trump and administration folks. So she handled it like a champ, basically doing what she can to make it seem like she was working with the administration while not just kowtowing exactly whatever it was said. But there are critics of Norton who are citing her age and the visibility that she has, or not so much, in her failing to push back from the get-go. Allies tout the decades of wins for home rule as has been there by Ms. Norton, but at this point, people are saying she's got to give it up. The flap underscores tension between local governments and federal control during security deployments in all over the nation, and specifically in places like the District of Columbia, which does not belong to anyone. It is a city, it is a district, it is the capital of our nation. It doesn't live inside of any other place because it's the nation's capital, not the state's capital. However, its sovereignty works with a mayor that manages the city on its own, not with the president who's running everything else. Just like in your city where your governor is. I live in Little Rock. The governor lives here and it works out here. There's a mayor for this city, and have been various mayors who've done their stuff to make the city safer. Well, it's not Sarah Huckabee Sanders' job to run the police force. It's Mayor Frank Scott's. That's how things work. Now, successors are already lining up, testing the message for 2026. Who's going to take this spot? It's a elected spot, because it has to be. But will they keep pushing for the incumbent, Ms. Norton, as opposed to someone new and fresh to go going forward? Now, the office points to all things in advocacy in Congress. Despite the storm, Norton is going to keep on keeping on if she can, and see if she can survive whatever happens in 2026 and move forward from there. A little bit of fireworks on the TV yesterday, as ABC's George Stephanopoulos ended an interview with VP JD Vance fairly early after a heated clash over that Tom Homan cash scandal. This week interview blew up pretty quickly with questions on alleged cash to border official Tom Homan. Vance called it a smear. Meanwhile, Stephanopoulos just basically cut the segment short after the non-answers came from the questions about the $50,000 in a bag that was supposedly handed to Homan, and where the money is, and did he keep it, and why was the bag there. The exchange triggered instant partisan spin cycles on social media and pile-ons for everybody who can get to their phones fast enough. For people who watch in the media, watching political stuff in the media, because there wasn't enough football this weekend, it's a case study in live TV fact-checking and framing. Why fact-checking live on TV gets to be an issue? Because you tell somebody, no, sir, you're lying, and they say, no, sir, I'm not lying. You get this. Expect some follow-ups and some providence on what's going on. Stephanopoulos already in hot water when dealing with the administration for what he says, whether they are true or not, or whether they are expository or not. and a lot of things going on. Plus, just going over any recordings, any DOJ stuff, dealing with the actual dealings with Homan. Homan is a lightning rod on his own, but we do know that JD Vance knows how to play the game and plays it well, as most of the manga do in their attack, and avoiding of answering anything of relevance. Y'all slid into my DMs this weekend as we talked some Luigi Mangione because his lawyers are trying to get the case thrown out of jail, seeking dismissal of charges in UnitedHealthcare CEO's assassination case. And as you jumped in my DMs and comments, it was pretty overwhelming that the folks that wanted to reach out to me were saying Mangione is innocent, leave the man alone, and some said he's really cute. That's what's there. But from the robot editor and the actual articles out there, defense moved to toss the death penalty eligible count and suppress key evidence, arguing overreach and bad searches. Filing challenges whether that the paired crimes of violence theory lists in this as part of the term as a fact that should fit to this one is what prosecutors are alleging. Was this a crime of violence, or was it just a thing that they're still going to prove that he didn't do? National coverage frames the bid as the first major test of the government's theory that it is a big deal and he should get the death penalty for this action. Hearings are expected on the Miranda issues and the warrant scope on the shape of what's admissible. Was he actually given his rights properly? Is the scope and of the actual search for him, the scope of the actual indictment, is it actually something that's fitting? Meanwhile, families of the victim and investors are watching the timelines of potential penalty exposure. Investors, because it's a company. He was the CEO of a pretty big company that's doing what it can to stay afloat going forward with all the issues with government shutdowns and healthcare and things like that. And losing its leader, whether he was a good guy or not, whether he was about to be seen for some bad faults or not, is an issue for investors. And for his family, yeah, they want answers. They kind of want to know if they're going to get some justice from this action as well. So the like, share, subscribe section right now, we're gonna get a little extra touchy. So very quickly, like the video you're watching here so we'll get more people engaged with us. Like more so I can know you're doing the right stories. I think we're doing that. We'll give you proof in a second. Share with like-minded people so more people will engage with what we have going on. And if you're not subscribed to us, subscribe, because you're not getting us naturally in your feed. You'll get us directly as the day goes by, live as this thing comes down to you on Facebook, on X, and on YouTube, and in your replays. However, I'm not even asking so much for your notifications, because who wants to be notified at 5:30 in the morning Central Time that I'm jacking at you? Pick me up when you want to. But here's some great things going on. It took me a while, over a year. For 2025, it's been a bit of a trouble for a lot of things, including, ironically, Donald Trump returning to the presidency and government shutdowns and things that come about with them. We've had some triumphs, and I had to actually go through and do some actual creative thinking and do some triumphs. I'm not going through the full slides, but here I was going to our reach to 2,500 actual subscribers for YouTube. YouTube has been paying us based off of, we reached a partnership program. At the beginning of the year, January 1st, we had 1,629 viewers. This was a ride up to 2,500. At the time, we said we were throwing out the number to make it sound like it was cooler. We actually reached up to 2,000 in March. So it didn't take us very long, 3 months, to get to 2,000 from 1,600, 400 viewers. And we taught a number. We want to double this by the end of the year for another 2,000 viewers or subscribers. Well, not quite that, but guess what? If you actually think about it and do real math and not get too hyperbolic about it, because when we hit the 2,500 mark, we had a thing we're talking about. But guess what? We actually did a little better. We actually got a full 1,000 subscribers so far in this year, 2025. We're at 2,603 subscribers. Assume we don't lose any in the next day or so. We'll stay there for a while. And so it took us 10 months to get to 1,000 more subscribers. It took us many years to get to 1,600. It took us about 2-3 years of actively doing this to get from about 500 to that first new 1,000 and getting monetizing that one. So I want to thank you all for doing all that great stuff. But the main sort of point to this is we need more engagement, need more people. We're still extremely small. We want to get larger, want to have a bigger impact. I want people to listen to me ramble on words and choke on my thoughts and cough and things like that, and have more conversations with more people like you. I want to have a chance to bring in some bigger names to chat about and convince them that, yeah, this worth this time. Maybe not getting up at 5:30, but some time for extra time in some videos back and forth. And if this thing takes better care of itself and some of the more better media stuff, I can back away from some of the other aspects of literally paying the bills. We're not going into hurricane, tornado, life stuff that's been kind of, challenging for the last couple of years. But things are still moving forward. Things still need to be caught up on and they need to work on there. So to give me the reason and the right to sit on this microphone and talk, to work through my own therapy and make a little money to take care of the family, I appreciate you. It's very simple. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you want to see it, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on X. And if you're on X, make sure you're following us along and giving us your opinions on the stories. Every 50 minutes, you post them for you to engage in. Same for Facebook. And if you're on YouTube, consider joining the membership. Click there or go into our partnership link. It's actually cheaper for the same tiers in YouTube than it is at Buy Me a Coffee. Just throwing it out there. So after chaotic layoffs at the CDC, about 7 employees were told that they still have jobs and they asked them to come back to work. This coming from the union that tried to fight this in the first place, and media reports are going back and forth. So basically half of the fired CDC employees are basically being reinstated quietly, except people heard about it. About 1,300 were actually got notices to be removed or remove themselves before the partial reversals. About half are back. Axios has coverage that has the map of which took the biggest hits, what centers actually had more people being dismissed, and where more people are coming back to or saying, "No, your job's actually here. Please come back. Please come back." Staffing whiplash lands amid broader HHH turmoil and ongoing litigation on a whole batch of things that are way too crazy to even go into. We'll get to more crazy in a second. But with so much drama in the CDC, it's hard being a guy like RFK Jr. to run these things going forward and do the work with less people, so people are coming back. The weakened surveillance and response capacity to the flu and COVID vaccines this season alone has been one of the things that have brought people back and said this is going to be an issue. COVID apparently not as bad so far. The flu season getting into ramping things up. I've seen people on campus, people walking around masks because they have the flu, and we're trying to keep the students from infecting themselves over and over and over again. But we're going to see how things work out as more CDC employees are back at work immediately. Meanwhile, Republican governors who literally backed RFK Jr., not the ones that just sort of went along with it, the ones that actually pushed for him to have the job running our health, are having some issues with his claims about autism being linked to circumcision. This is a real thing, folks. To go to Ground News and check it out. This is real. Now, after he floated, that being Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a link between autism, circumcision, and Tylenol, all three, many backers expressed a bafflement and wanted to distance themselves from RFK Jr. for a little bit. Science has quickly labeled the claim unsupported, citing weak and misused studies. Of course, there's been all sorts of bashing about Tylenol and autism since that came out there, but the act that I'm not even sure exactly where it came from, but it's we checked it. It's there. There was some sort of talk about circumcision. People who are circumcised are more likely to are males because women shouldn't get circumcised. That's a whole nother liberal rights issue to talk about at places where that happens. But men who are circumcised are more likely to have autism than men who aren't, which is why are we checking this? Why are we checking this? Why are we doing this? Libertarian and analysts pan the claim for having lack of logic, just not making any sense. Fresh questions about the HHH leadership are now afoot because with shutdowns happening and workforce and drain, and some people coming back to CDC because they actually are needed to take care of work, we are questioning the guy in charge and his ability to stay in charge because his ability seems a little off. Let's take some time to visit with Mark Sanchez, the former quarterback on the NFL. He has been released from the hospital and processed by police. He was discharged from the hospital. His wounds had healed it up, filler enough, and then booked to Marion County Jail in Indianapolis, where all the stuff happened last week. The parking lot fight that left him stabbed. Details say the incident timeline are pretty significant and pretty simple. The felony battery count he faces are shown in AP reports and other news access as well. The truck driver says he acted in self-defense after pepper spray failed to subdue Mr. Sanchez. Civil action has not been filed yet in that case. Sanchez thanks the first responders and signaled a long recovery for himself. Meanwhile, Fox Sports is monitoring the actual activity. No on-air changes announced yet. Obviously, he didn't work last weekend, 2 weekends, because he was hospitalized. When will he be back to the desk? We shall see if he's back for Big Noon Sunday this upcoming weekend, because I don't know the game. I know the game listed here, but I think it's a Michigan game, so it might be a big one to deal with. And you might want your full staff there, although Sanchez might be more of a hindrance, a shadow on the coverage, if you will, than actual play-by-play announcing or any actual analyst work. We need K-pop demon hunters in our feed so that we can get plenty of clicks, because this thing will shoot to the moon anytime we put it in there. And this one, a very small, very simple story, became a big story that went out there throughout the weekend. K-pop demon hunters ramen trend, I called it a challenge. It's more of a trend. It's causing dangerous burns, doctors are warning. Because ear doctors are reporting many scald injuries tied to the fans trying to react the noodle slurp scene from Netflix film. You know, when the girls are going, yeah. But because of that, radio explainers are going out there for the radio listeners online and people just in general on the world on safer prep for your ramen. Mean your cooling time after it comes out of the microwave or after you pour the hot water on it and give it some time to cool, just like regular soup. The choice of a bowl, making it something that is going to be something you can hold in your hands and not something that's going to be so hot you drop it, and do other things such as carefulness to avoid a risk of a burn, to reduce your burn risk, if you will. Pediatric cases feature face and chest burns from overturned cups of ramen bowls. Essentially, bowl so hot, you just kind of throw it up and it spills on you and gets hot water everywhere, and not very good. Hospitals are urging parents to skip microwave cups and for the younger kids because it's hot, and actually supervise stovetop prep. One of the first things I learned how to cook was ramen when I was like 4 or 5. And same thing with my younger sister. We were, first things we learned to cook because back then you had to cook on the stove. It was simple, it was easy. It was just hot water, some noodles, let it boil, drop in the flavor packet. Although I dropped the flavor packet in afterwards, I didn't cook it with the packet, and it went from there. It is simple. It is lovely. It is the food that once you go to college, at least back in the day, you say you never eat it again. And now ramen is all the rage. And the kids eating it up literally are burning themselves over the world. So watch it, parents. Social media platforms are amplifying the trend, watching people actually hashtag what's going on. And clinicians are trying to hijack that with safety tips as opposed to, the slurping noodles, because it's so cool. It's so awesome. It's just like what they did in K-pop demon hunters. Should be just like Zoe, Rumi, and Mira, and slurp your noodles with the best of them. Just don't hunt the demons. That's a whole nother level. We cannot escape the weekend without some sports going on. Although this one is less sports, more reality TV, more being in people's business, because conversational topics are about being in people's business. Bill Belichick and the UNC documentary is now being shopped around. Hulu exited out of the Belichick UNC documentary after producers found out that when your fan base doesn't like you and you don't win games, they don't necessarily want to see you anywhere. There's lots of talks about how to maneuver Belichick's exit from UNC and how to make it so that no one has to pay him any money. It seems to be a thing that rolled him out from the NFL, if you will. But right now, the doc's being pitched to other platforms per People Magazine to make some money off of it. The trades are saying that the series is actually not quite done. It's still something you can cut up, still in post. And this is because of the rocky start at UNC. They decided to leave things open and not finalize it because the opening season for the Carolina Tar Heels in football, very terrible, very, very, very bad. So Fox Sports is reporting that Hulu's decision is basically right off of the fact that UNC started off pretty terrible and is not doing better going forward. Though the project feature is still active. I mean, it's someone paid some money to get it started. Someone will eventually pay to put it on the air. Will it make the premium money? Probably not. The new buyer could reshape the tone because it's not finalized yet. They can turn this from the legacy of Bill Belichick going from the pros to the college, or from college to pros to college, and make it to a rebuilding effort from the bad start to going to a better deal this season, maybe next season. So when you take a college town and the interest in that college town, North Carolina is big interest, although it's mostly for basketball. And some curiosity from the NFL bringing in one of the most storied coaches who couldn't seem to find another coaching job in the big leagues. It makes for a likely good thing to look at, a good documentary to see. If this were something scripted and it had Scott Bakula, maybe I'd watch it. But if it's the way it's going here, it's going to be a curiosity thing. And it's going to be something that will be a secondary curiosity because most people are kind of tired of Belichick's shtick anyway. We'll see. Someone picks it up, probably will, but it'll be for cheap, and how they actually cut it in the end, because it's all about the editing for your documentaries. We did it. Yay, we did it. And we did it extremely long, 25 minutes just to get the stories in. I know it went long in the like, share, and subscribe part to talk about the numbers. I'm proud of that going forward, but I'm have to do that. Right now, we've got to talk about, because we got to keep ourselves viable on the air, our spotlight sponsor, which is Ground News. Ground News allows you to get news. Simple. News that is great. Simple. News that may not be so great. Also simple, because what it does, it gives you a way to analyze the news coverage by literally seeing all the news coverage out there. Ground News aggregates news stories from all over the internet to cover all stories, whether they are local, whether they are national or international, based on where you is. And you can see what's being covered and how by the places. Ground News will show you who's covering it, the actual platforms, who's behind those platforms, who pays for them, and how they actually lean on a political mindset, whether they lean more Republican, more conservative, or more liberal, more Democratic, or if they're more or less wire service who kind of play down the middle, although many people think wire services don't play down the middle, which is kind of a problem we have right now. What you get from Ground News is all coverage from all places, so you can see exactly where things are happening. What's really cool about that is you use their blind spot feature. You can literally see the news that's not being told to you by various sides of the aisle, various platforms, various silos, like to say. If you're a Republican red type viewer of news, you can see what stories they're not showing you. If you're a blue liberal type of news person that's more Democratic, see the stories that they're not showing you, and the stories they're showing you in its place, so you can see more of it. Because I'm going to let you in the secret, everyone's trying to sell you on a view, on a vision. Everyone's trying to make sure you think in a way that works in their level, because they want to keep you there. So see what's being out there and get a chance to do your own research and take in what you see and determine whose side you want to talk about, whose side you want to put into, and what's going there. I'm looking in my corner to see if Trump is talking. I think Trump already talked. So there's someone else is speaking at the parliament in Israel. So some other person is speaking right now. So since that thought I interrupted, let me actually tell you how to get this deal. 40% off the Vantage plan and other plans at Ground News. Get your news for less than $10 a month for great options, great coverage from this. It's theconversationproject.com/ground news. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news, and get yourself in on great news, or sometimes not so great news, once you see where it's coming from Ground News. Very quickly, our website home. This is theconversationproject.com. The conversation inbox, gmail.com, is our email address where you can directly talk to me for things, talk about stories that we may have missed, stories you may have talked too much about. Maybe you think we overcovered something, or we actually put too much emphasis on something. Blame the robot editor for being a bot and wanting to spread information that would cause machines to take over, I guess. Go to facebook.com/this is conversation project and x.com/th_conversation. You can follow us on what we call the feeds, our links there, where we post news articles every 50 minutes or so for you to engage in. And you can tell us by voting up, essentially, which stories are more likely to be conversational, which stories we're more likely to talk about. We do pull in the breaking news, headline news. Of course, the hostages did not get a chance to get much love because it happened as we woke up. But we do take in your account and have been for the life of this actual project, even back when it was 8 things to talk about, when it was strictly the 8 top stories based on your engagement. And it got really weird sometimes when some odd story would get headline tops that I didn't know about, had no clue what was happening. But we had to talk about it. Now it's a conversation, not just a newsletter that's a monologue. And so this is us conversating, going back and forth on topics worth talking about. Today, we wrapped it up for Monday, October 13th, 2025. It is very, very late. We're hitting 30 minutes on this day today. So I apologize. 10 stories should not take 30 minutes, should still take about 2022. But we got excited. We got excitable. Hopefully you stuck around with this thing if you're watching it live, or if you're watching it on the replays. We thank you so much for sticking with us. Tell us where you're watching it from, what you enjoy, what you didn't enjoy, what we can do better, what we can do less bad at, if you will. Love you. Mean it. It's going to be a rough week as we are going to figure out if our military gets paid this week and other government shutdown shenanigans going back and forth, as those guys aren't talking to each other. There's no way we're going to have a settlement this week. We may have the beginning of peace in the Middle East starting today, but I don't think peace is happening in D.C. in the United States this week. It's going to get bad. It's going to get ugly. People are going to start feeling it this week. So if you're feeling it, let us know within either comments or the stories we choose to show you what it is we want to talk about. I said I'm shutting up. I'm shutting up. Love you. Once again, mean it so much. We out of here. Let's hope we can make this thing go. Let's see. Hope we can actually wake up tomorrow morning, because it's going to be a long day, and do this thing for Tuesday.